The camera loved him. Xiao Zhan knew this not with vanity, but with a weary, practiced acceptance. It captured the light in his eyes, the curve of his lips, the effortless crinkle at the corners. He was a master of the public smile, a professional at radiating a joy that felt as warm and genuine as a summer afternoon. He had given this smile to countless strangers, to colleagues, to demanding directors, and to the endless sea of cameras that followed his every move. It was a tool, a shield, a performance. A beautiful, empty performance. But in the quiet moments between takes, when the lights were dimmed and the crew scattered, the smile would simply vanish. It wasn't a conscious act, more like a tide receding from the shore, leaving behind the true, desolate landscape of his face. His lips would settle into a flat, tired line. The light in his eyes would fade, replaced by a profound, almost heartbreaking stillness. This was the face he reserved for himself, the face that held the untold stories of sleepless nights, the weight of a million expectations, and the suffocating loneliness of being adored for a persona, not a person. He was a king in a gilded cage, and the bars were the adoration of millions. Then there was Wang Yibo. Yibo was chaos and calm, a whirlwind of blunt honesty and quiet dedication. He moved through the world with a singular, unapologetic focus, his energy a stark contrast to Xiao Zhan's gentle, accommodating nature. When they first met, Xiao Zhan had simply seen a talented colleague, a dance prodigy with a cool exterior. He had offered his professional smile, a friendly nod, and a polite, welcoming demeanor. Yibo had not returned it. He had looked at Xiao Zhan with a frank, unblinking gaze that saw right through the performance. It wasn't hostile, just observant. It was the first time in a very long time that Xiao Zhan had felt truly seen, and the feeling was both unnerving and profoundly liberating. The first crack in the facade came on a sweltering afternoon on the set of The Untamed. They were in their full robes, heavy and hot, between scenes. Xiao Zhan's smile was firmly in place as he chatted with the crew, but his body language betrayed his fatigue. He leaned against a rock, his shoulders slumped ever so slightly, a micro-expression of exhaustion that the camera would never catch. Yibo, who had been practicing a new move with his staff a few yards away, suddenly stopped. He walked over, not speaking, but holding out a small, chilled bottle of water. Xiao Zhan's professional smile didn't falter as he took the water. "Thank you, Yibo," he said, his voice polite and smooth. Yibo said nothing. He simply watched. And in that silent, unwavering gaze, Xiao Zhan felt his energy drain away. He felt the weight of the smile, the ache in his cheeks. He felt a desperate need to simply stop. He lowered the water bottle, and the smile slipped. His face went blank, vulnerable, a canvas wiped clean. And in that moment, for the first time, he saw Yibo's face soften. A faint, almost imperceptible smile of his own touched his lips. It wasn't a big, blinding thing. It was quiet, gentle, and it was only for him. It was a silent conversation, a profound acknowledgement. *I see your real face. And it's enough. From that moment on, a new language developed between them. It was a silent dialect of shared glances and knowing looks. The world saw two actors, brilliant at their craft, building a powerful on-screen chemistry. The world saw their public interactions, the playful teasing, the shared laughter. But they saw something else entirely. There was a scene where they had to walk together, their characters in a moment of heavy, unspoken conflict. The director called action, and their faces became a mask of pain and solemnity. But as they walked, their hands brushed, and Yibo's thumb ever so slightly, almost imperceptibly, brushed against Xiao Zhan's. It was a small, secret gesture of comfort, a silent anchor in a world of turmoil. And in the second before the camera cut to a close-up, a real, unscripted smile touched the very edges of Xiao Zhan's lips, a ghost of a thing, meant only for Yibo. The public smile was dazzling, but it was a firework display, a burst of manufactured light. The smiles he gave to Yibo were different. They were quiet, steady, and warm, like the glow of a lantern in a dark, lonely night. One night, after a grueling day of filming, Xiao Zhan found himself sitting alone on a stone bench, staring at the stars. The weight of his world was crushing. The demands, the constant scrutiny, the gnawing emptiness. A single tear, unbidden, traced a path down his cheek. He didn't even hear Yibo approach. "Hey," Yibo said, his voice unusually soft, devoid of its usual clipped, cool tone. Xiao Zhan quickly wiped his face, a reflex born of years of hiding his true emotions. "Oh hey," he said, forcing a cheerful tone. "Just enjoying the cool air." Yibo didn't buy it. He sat down beside him, a comfortable silence settling between them. He didn't ask what was wrong. He didn't offer empty platitudes. He simply sat, a silent, unmoving presence. He was a rock in the stormy sea of Xiao Zhan's life. After a long while, Yibo finally spoke. "It's a lot, isn't it?" The simple, empathetic words were like a key turning in a lock. The dam broke. Xiao Zhan finally, for the first time, let the mask fall completely. He didn't speak, but he didn't have to. The exhaustion, the loneliness, the fear of disappointing everyone, it all poured out in the form of quiet, shuddering sobs. Yibo didn't say anything, didn't try to comfort him with words. He just reached out and placed a hand on Xiao Zhan's shoulder, a silent, grounding touch. And in the darkness, with only the stars as witness, Xiao Zhan cried until his chest ached, the tears washing away the residue of 1,000 fake smiles. When he finally looked up, his eyes red and his face streaked with tears, Yibo was looking at him with a tenderness that was so raw, so honest, it took his breath away. And for the first time, a smile of pure, unfiltered relief spread across Xiao Zhan's face. It wasn't for the cameras. It wasn't for the public. It was a private, sacred moment of vulnerability and connection. It was for Wang Yibo. As their careers soared to unimaginable heights, the world saw their success, their fame, their endless stream of projects. They saw a brilliant, beautiful friendship forged in the crucible of a legendary drama. But behind the scenes, away from the prying eyes of the world, there were moments that only they shared. A shared meal in a quiet hidden corner of a restaurant where Xiao Zhan could laugh his genuine, uninhibited laugh. A late-night phone call where they would talk about nothing and everything, the sound of each other's voices a soothing balm for their tired souls. A simple, comfortable silence where no words were needed. The world loved Xiao Zhan's smile, but only one person knew its true origin. Only one person knew the difference between the firework display and the steady lantern. And for Xiao Zhan, that was enough. The first cracks had appeared, and the world saw a different Xiao Zhan, a glimpse of the genuine, resilient man behind the perfect smile. But the true story, the one known only to him and Wang Yibo, was far deeper. The emotional core of their connection was not about public bravery, but about the quiet, hidden moments where the smile was reserved for one person alone. The world had its narrative of their friendship. The famous Bo Jun-yi Xiao pairing, the playful on-screen rivalry, the off-screen camaraderie that endeared them to millions. This was the story sold on magazine covers and in television interviews. It was a well-crafted, marketable truth. But the true story was told in silence, in shared looks that spoke volumes, in the unspoken understanding that had become the bedrock of their bond. After the gala incident, the public's perception of Xiao Zhan shifted, but the pressure intensified. He was no longer just a talented actor. He was now a public hero. The expectation to be a flawless idol was replaced by the demand to be a perfect role model. The weight on his shoulders became heavier, and the moments of profound loneliness grew more frequent. One evening, after a relentless day of back-to-back interviews where he was repeatedly asked about his heroic act, he retreated to his hotel room. The space, vast and impersonal, felt colder than usual. He had 1,000 messages on his phone, all congratulating him, all praising his character. He felt a profound sense of fraud. The man they were celebrating was not him, it was a character he had played flawlessly. He slumped onto the couch, the vibrant lights of the city outside doing nothing to warm the emptiness within. He didn't know why, but he felt an overwhelming need to talk to Wang Yibo. He picked up his phone, his fingers hovering over the contact. It was late, and he knew Yibo's schedule was just as brutal as his own. He hesitated, 1,000 rational excuses for not calling flooding his mind. But the emptiness felt stronger than his hesitation. He dialed. The phone rang 3 times before Yibo's voice, raspy with sleep, answered. "Hello. It's me," Xiao Zhan said, his voice barely a whisper. There was a moment of silence on the other end, and then the sound of rustling sheets. "What's wrong?" Yibo's tone was instantly awake, alert. The shift was so sharp it was almost startling. Xiao Zhan didn't have a script for this. I just needed to hear your voice." He heard Yibo sit up on the other end. "Zhanji, Yibo said, using the affectionate honorific that was reserved for their private moments. What happened? And then it all came pouring out. Not about the gala, not about the praise, but about the crushing weight of it all. The feeling of being a lie, of living a life that was not his own. He spoke of the endless interviews, the constant demands, the suffocating feeling of being trapped in a public image that didn't belong to him. He spoke of the tears he shed alone in his room, the secret art he created to keep a piece of his soul intact. Yibo listened without interruption. He didn't offer advice or platitudes. He simply let Xiao Zhan's words fill the silence. When Xiao Zhan finally fell silent, exhausted from his confession, Yibo's voice came back, calm and steady. "I know." That simple phrase held more comfort than 1,000 words of reassurance. "You know?" Xiao Zhan asked, his voice thick with emotion. "I see it," Yibo said. "I see the difference in your smile." The words were a hammer blow to Xiao Zhan's heart, but not in a painful way. In a way that broke down the final wall he had built around himself. "Which one?" he asked, his voice trembling. "The one for them," Yibo said, his voice soft. "It reaches your eyes, but it doesn't touch your soul. But the one you give to me, that one is different. It's real. It's pure." In that moment, lying in the quiet of his hotel room, a profound and overwhelming sense of relief washed over Xiao Zhan. He wasn't alone. He wasn't a fraud. Someone, somewhere, saw him for who he truly was. And that someone was Wang Yibo. Their connection deepened from that phone call. It became a lifeline. They couldn't always be physically together, but they found a way to be present in each other's lives. Late-night video calls, quiet messages sent between sets, a shared look across a crowded award ceremony that no one else would ever notice. These were the moments that kept Xiao Zhan tethered to his true self. One day, they were filming a segment for a variety show. The director had asked them to play a game, a silly thing meant to create cute content for the fans. Xiao Zhan, in his public persona, was a master at this. He was charming, playful, and his laugh was infectious. He played along, his smile bright, his eyes sparkling. The cameras were rolling, the crew was laughing, and he was giving them the perfect show. But in the middle of a joke, his eyes flickered to Yibo. Yibo wasn't laughing. He was watching Xiao Zhan, a serious, almost sad look on his face. It was the look of a person who knew the cost of that performance. He didn't scold him or call him out. He just watched. The smile on Xiao Zhan's face faltered for a fraction of a second, a small, unnoticeable hiccup in his performance. And in that instant, a single powerful thought went through his mind. Asterisk, I want to stop. I want to be real. For him. Asterisk. Later, during a short break, Yibo came over to him, his face still serious. "Are you okay, Zhanji?" he asked, his voice low and concerned. Xiao Zhan felt a surge of emotion. "I'm just tired," he admitted, the words feeling like a monumental confession. Yibo nodded, his expression softening. He reached out and, in a gesture so quick and subtle that no camera would ever catch it, he gently touched Xiao Zhan's arm. "Just be you," he whispered. "That's enough." That simple act, that whispered sentence, was a turning point. Xiao Zhan realized that he didn't need to be the perfect idol for the whole world. He just needed to be real for one person. And in that reality, he would find his own salvation. From that day forward, he began to subtly change his approach. He still gave the world its smile, but he found ways to infuse it with a little more of himself. He spoke his mind a little more freely in interviews. He let his quirky, artistic side show a little more often. The change was so subtle that no one in the public noticed, but to Wang Yibo, it was a revolution. He would see Xiao Zhan on television, his smile as bright as ever, but in the depth of his eyes, Yibo would see a new light, the light of a soul that was no longer hiding in plain sight. The final scene of their unspoken story took place at a major awards show. They were both nominated for prestigious awards, and the air was electric with anticipation. They sat next to each other, a quiet island of calm in a sea of celebrities. The world saw two successful young men at the pinnacle of their careers. They saw two friends exchanging quiet jokes. But what the world didn't see was the moment before they were announced as winners. As the cameras prepared for their reaction shots, Xiao Zhan's hand, resting on the chair between them, was suddenly covered by Yibo's. The touch was firm and reassuring. Yibo didn't say a word, but his message was clear. Asterisk, I'm here. You're not alone. Asterisk. And as their names were announced and the flashbulbs exploded around them, Xiao Zhan's smile, for the world to see, was triumphant.